Another Mock Draft Monday special episode of your daily source for fantasy hockey is coming in red hot for our latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We're drafting from the 10th slot, trying to get you guys ready for draft season. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, my fantasy fanatics? Welcome back inside the lab to your daily 30-minute source for all things fantasy hockey. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. I see you, I appreciate you, and I can't thank you enough for riding with us for yet another year of fantasy hockey draft prep, and we're going to get into it for another Mock Draft Monday special. I'm drafting from the 10th slot today. Just your boy once again. I'll be here all week long. 3 more episodes this week, trying to put all of the angles that you need in your back pocket to dominate these drafts. We're not coming for 4th, 3rd, or 2nd. We're coming for the first place spot, and dedicated GMs right now, even in the dog days of summer, they are absolutely tapped in. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Like I said, my friends, I believe this is the 3rd mock draft that we're doing. This is the first mock draft I'm doing solo on the show. So stick with your boy, because at the end of the day, throwing out an angle like drafting from the 10th spot, it's not ideal. Snake drafts, which I think most of us now compete in, it gives you a bit of an opportunity to really pick your spots. If you're properly prepared, realistically, drafting from any position should not affect your overall ability to build a winner. Is it going to make it tougher? Yeah, it could, but there are still going to be a lot of options out there should you do your draft prep, and that's why you're tapped into the pod every single day. Shout out to my co-host Steele. Shout out to the season rapidly approaching also, my friends. We are at August 25th on this Monday. We are closing in on October 7th very quickly. This mock draft, 10 teams, same format that we always run. 2 centers, 2 left wing, 2 right wing, 4 D, 4 bench. This isn't a traditional banger league that Steele and I usually compete in, so they are not counting blocks and penalty minutes. Every other category standard is in there. Goals, assists, hits are included. Block shots, not, like I said, but all of the standard categories apply. Same for goaltenders. And here I am drafting from the 10th spot. So you're going to see all standard names that you expect to go here. I think coming into this season, more so than ever, perhaps, those top 4 positions are kind of locked in. Now, after that, that's when things start to get real interesting, especially for your boy sitting here at 10th. So let's swap in the screen here for the draft. I'm going to get that up. You know, I miss my boy Steele here on the 1s and 2s heavy. But if you're on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button and tap into the pod so you can see what's going on. McDavid, Draisaitl, 1-2, no problem. I don't know about you guys out there, but at this point in fantasy draft content, fantasy hockey content, we are really in a situation where you've heard all of the angles that you need to hear in terms of what's going on with these teams, what the players have done, what we expect them to do. Soon we're going to have real, tangible news to talk about. I was thinking about this a lot before coming on to today's show, that we're only a couple of weeks away from training camp. Then we're really going to have some real news to start to discuss once again, because if you're dedicated and a bit of a degenerate like me, it almost feels like a rinse and repeat, or perhaps maybe we've spoken about so many of these angles over and over again, right? Like Cale Makar's the first D-man off. We know who the first 4 players are. We know we want to wait for goaltenders. Soon, we'll have line rushes. We'll have injuries. We'll see what coaches are doing with their lineups. However, for me, in terms of my lineup, here at the 10th spot, players' names on the board that I'm going to be looking at: Austin Matthews. I spoke about him previously. Mikko Rantanen, Quinn Hughes. Even in a league like this, I see Brady Tkachuk ranked at 12th. Any other league, usually, that we compete in, banger leagues, Brady Tkachuk is going to bring that love, and I'd probably be taking him. But a guy like Mikko Rantanen, last season, obviously the trades, Colorado, Carolina, Dallas, still finishes the year with 88 points. 2 previous seasons, 105, 104, and before that, 92. This guy is an absolute beast. Some weird stuff going on in the offseason for Mikko Rantanen. Apparently, he's catching some heat for not serving time in the Finnish army. Anyway, we got Kaprizov off the board at 6, Hellebuck 7th. He's the best fantasy goaltender in the league, but first round for a goalie is too early. David Pasternak 8th. These are all standard. You got Matthews at 9. Sure, there's some of these are auto drafts. I understand that, but preparing for it still holds true. Mikko Rantanen on Yahoo right now is also giving you left wing, right wing options. The Dallas Stars are for real. They are going to be there. Mikko Rantanen comes off the board for me at 10th. Totally fine with the selection. And now I'm back up at 11th. And I kind of thought about the strategy here. And, some people might go out there and get themselves their first goalie. I immediately thought I would like to take a blue liner here. And it's got to be Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes, say what you will about the peripheral value. Say what you will about the Vancouver Canucks this season. All of the drama that went on in Vancouver the past 2 years, and they've still been knocking on the door as a playoff team. I was just talking to my boy Blake Creamer. Shout out to the Apples and Genos. Shout out to Zero G, as we always do. We got to give our quality NHL fantasy hockey analysts the due that they deserve. Quinn Hughes is such a good defenseman. And what I would implore you to do is, if you do take a player like Quinn Hughes, who is, and I'm just confirming his peripheral stats now, who's only going to give you 13 hits, 67 block shots, 192 shots on net, 29 penalty minutes, you're going to want to, if you're in banger leagues, I love the ability here in the 10th spot to balance out my roster immediately with a forward and a D-man, but you're going to have to continue to do so if you're in the categorical banger leagues, because not only is Mikko Rantanen not going to bring you a ton, but for sure Quinn Hughes is not going to bring you a ton of peripheral value either. So I'm going to be coming up at the next pick, looking to perhaps add a player who does fill out the categories a little bit more, even in a league like this that doesn't count the PIMs and the blocks. You constantly want to be looking at the makeup of your team. It might sound obvious to a lot of experts out there, but I've said this a lot on this show. We are for everybody. Fantasy hockey is for everybody. We got the experts out there. We got the guys and gals who have been in it only for a couple of years. They're still getting comfortable with it all. And then you obviously have beginners. I love when people shoot us messages, Flip, Steele, I'm new to fantasy hockey. I've played, a lot of people kind of start in fantasy football, I think, maybe even fantasy baseball or basketball. And then if you do like hockey, that's the last one you join. It's not exactly easy. However, I want to come on here and give angles for everybody to consider. So it might sound very obvious to balance out your team, quote unquote, but I have done this for a long time. And even myself, I've been a victim of taking the players that I really like. Okay, you've got that down, but you want to balance out those categories always. Quinn Hughes, last season, my last pick off the board at 11th overall, 76 points for Quinn Hughes. This is a guy who has to carry so much weight and a lot of minutes too for the Canucks. 25 plus minutes of ice time per night. I don't think you can go wrong with Quinn Hughes as your number one or first D-man off the board. I'm totally comfortable with that. NHL.com has Quinn Hughes ranked as the 16th overall player off the board in their 200 ranking. Matt Larkin, I believe, has him in a very similar spot at Daily Faceoff. You know, I like bringing up these angles and these rankings. 16th overall for Matt Larkin as well. I think getting him at 11th is a very fair price to invest in a guy who should return with relative ease if this Canucks team kind of figures it out a little bit and you see a bounce back from Elias Pettersson that I expect personally. Then I'm very much okay with expecting another, let's say, around 80-point season from Quinn Hughes. Before we get to the break, I'm going to fire off my 30th and 31st overall pick. I'm going to continue to wait for my goaltenders. Players ranked around this spot right now. I got Matt Boldy, Macklin Celebrini, Jason Robertson. I see a very good player in Rasmus Dahlin that I'm going to take as well. I'm going to take Rasmus Dahlin here first. Boom. My blue line's already looking studly. And then I see some forward names that I definitely want to go to, considering I am comfortable waiting for a goaltender. Boldy, Celebrini, Suzuki. Honestly, all three of those players there, I'm okay with at this spot. I've took a little bit of heat for taking Suzuki in one of our mock drafts over Celebrini. This Sharks team is going to be improved. I'm going to take Macklin Celebrini here in the 32nd spot as my second forward off the board. However, I also got to show some love to our friends today at Game Time, because today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Make sure you check out the Game Time app today, because it is the spot to be getting all your tickets, everything that you need to every single event in your area. College football is back, and there's never better than energy at the tailgates. The only downside, getting those tickets, endless queues, hidden fees. You don't want that on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets today. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Thank you so much for joining me for another solo episode of your daily source for fantasy hockey. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm up here at the 50th slot, mock draft Monday, tapping in. I think I'd like to start considering a goaltender here, but I'm going to wait even more. I see Lane Hudson. I see Rupe Hintz. I'm going to continue to load up on a beastly blue line, knowing, and this is the nice thing about snake drafts and going in 10th, is I can kind of just go with back-to-back positions, balancing it out spot for spot. I could go for a goaltender here. I see some intriguing names up front. I see Wyatt Johnston here, ranked on Yahoo at 61st. Natchez, Kadri, Hischier, Hintz. I'm going to reach a little bit. I'm going to take another Dallas Stars forward. I don't think it's a bad move, though, my friends. Wyatt Johnston is an absolute stud. The Dallas Stars are going to return to being an elite team that should be knocking on the door for a Stanley Cup, at least a Stanley Cup berth. They're so balanced. They are also a team, when you look at their forward group, not many that have as many options that they do so far. I got Macklin Celebrini, Wyatt Johnston, Mikko Rantanen, Rasmus Dahlin, and Lane Hudson. Now is when some GMs out there would continue to wait for a goaltender. I think here, I believe we're in the 7th round. I don't want to wait anymore. Goalies that I have now, options running thin a little bit. Kemper, Thompson, Markstrom, Linus Ullmark. To me, Linus Ullmark jumps out as the name to grab. He had some struggles with injury, some struggles with settling in Ottawa. This Senators team next year is going to be for real. You saw them take the step in the postseason against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anyway, I have no right wingers right now. Even with dual eligibility, I'm trying to continue to have my team be balanced. Konechny, Michkov, my boy Seth Jarvis. Seth Jarvis has dual eligibility as well. He's a player that I've been after constantly, and I say a lot. I apologize when I sound like I'm, on repeat, broken record, all of that. Seth Jarvis, that's not the case. I am going to stick to my guns on Seth Jarvis. 32 goals last year, 35 assists, 204 shots, 93 hits. He has such a high motor. He is an energy guy who also has the skills to pay the bills in a very big way. You also have a Carolina Hurricanes team that has been reloaded, and I am all over Seth Jarvis this year, and I have been for a very long time. Now is when I could take another goaltender, and I think I will. I don't like waiting too much because after the next few names on the board here, Binnington, Saros, Montembeault, Swayman, there's going to be a pretty significant drop-off. Nashville is scaring me this season. So is Montembeault a little bit, but I think Montembeault makes for a very sneaky second goaltending option on any team. I'll talk about the Montreal Canadiens more as we head towards the season. Sam Montembeault is a good goaltender. Last year, .901 save percentage, 4 shutouts. Get yourself a piece of the Habs if you can. I'm back on the board. I've got 3 D-men, and I'm loving it. I want to go to another winger. My time is running thin. Brian Russ, Matt Duchene, Alex Tuch, JJ Paterka. Alex Tuch is such a solid player. The Buffalo Sabres have a lot of really good forward pieces still in the mix. I saw other names on here, guys, that are also attractive to me. Tom Wilson, Dylan Guenther, Zach Hyman. Those are all players that I'd be very happy about having on my team. However, Alex Tuch is a tried and true piece that I'll go back to the well on. I'm going to stick out on my wing. I mentioned Zach Hyman as well. Clearly could have some injury concern there. So I see Svechnikov. Definitely a player to monitor. I just talked about the Carolina Hurricanes. I think a lot of people are sleeping on JJ Paterka. And when I look at my lineup of the last few players there, I'm good to take a risk on a player with some upside. JJ Paterka is that. Now, at the 111th spot, we got names on the board: Dylan Larkin, Rupe Hintz, John Tavares, Bo Horvat. I think I want to go back to rounding out my blue line because same thing with goalies. Defensemen can fall off quick. I see Brock Faber. I see Seth Jones. I'm going to take a risk on Alexander Nikishin. This is a player that a lot of people in the fantasy game are really high on for this season for a number of reasons. Make sure you stay tapped into the pod all the rest of the offseason. I'm going to break down the rest of my picks. I have only bench spots to fill, and I'm going to let it go auto draft and give you guys a bit of a slow breakdown here on what happens with just taking the best available player. And with my bench spots, I always talk about getting a little bit frisky at the end of drafts if you've done your research. Don't let a name or a veteran presence detract you from some really attractive younger players on the rise, especially if you've done a really good job of balancing out your squad at the top. I know it's fast and furious here, my friends. I know we got a lot going on, but the main angle to consider all day, every day with fantasy hockey is make sure you stay tapped into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast and do your research no matter the time of year. That's key. We'll be right back after the break. We'll round out my picks. We'll be back for more fantasy hockey breakdowns all week long right after this. Much love to those everydayers. Meet the world to both Steele and I. Shout out to Steele. Shout out to everyone out there trying to get this offseason paper. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. You've put together a survey to make sure our listeners make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like to hear and when. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered to win a chance of 1 of 10, 100 Amazon gift cards. That's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for helping us out. This is about you guys. And obviously, I love fantasy hockey. I like betting. By the way, we'll get back to nightly betting breakdowns for every single NHL night that we are on air for, trying to get you guys some money in those pocketbooks. However, when it comes to what just went down with the end of our third live Mock Draft Monday episode that I let go auto draft, I got Dylan Strome, Matt Duchene. I also have Cutter Gauthier and Brock Faber. I think I came on here a couple of weeks ago and talked a lot about Cutter Gauthier and how I think he is going to be one of those kind of, in more dedicated fantasy circles, a fantasy darling headed into this season. So much to like about the Anaheim Ducks. This is a player that also put up 44 points in 82 games last year, and he was just scratching the surface as a 20-year-old player, now 21. Do not sleep on what's going on with the Anaheim Ducks. Definitely do not sleep on Cutter Gauthier. I know today's episode was fast and furious. Let's recap it. Tell me what you think about my team, even though doing this solo without my boy Steele has been intense. I think his team is looking good, especially in this format. Celebrini and Wyatt Johnston at the center position. Kind of a little bit risky when it comes to young players who we expect to continue to take steps. Let's see what they do, though. I got two young centermen. I've got Rantanen and Jarvis at the left wing spot. I've got Tuck and Paterka at the right wing. Quinn Hughes, Darlene, Lane Hudson, and Nikishin on the blue line. By far, the strength of my team to me is that blue line. If for some reason you're in an exact same format as this, you got Quinn Hughes, Darlene, Hudson, and Nikishin, I am happy, more than happy with that blue line. I got Allmark as my number one, Montembeault as my number two. I think that's pretty solid. And maybe I could have waited for a player like Samuel Montembeault. I totally get that. But I was comfortable to take him there because, like I said, it's not always as clear cut as just a strategy. We love the 0G. I already showed love to the boys. However, it also is, there's no real set strategy in any fantasy sport for a reason. You have to be fluid. When goalies start to fly, you sometimes have to jump in there even if you don't want to, because you might be really out of luck. Also take in those 4 bench spots that came. I mentioned Cutter Gauthier, Brock Faber. I'm trying to stay away from Minnesota Wild players this year because I just don't know what's going to happen in Minnesota. They were so quiet in the offseason. Kaprizov had some serious injury concern last year. Matty Duchesne was another bench spot in Dallas. I have a whole bunch of Dallas Stars. That's why you don't auto draft, my friends, because even though I like my Dallas Stars, having 3 forwards in the same team is a little bit risky, a little bit bold. If they get skunked on a few different stretches, you might be up against it. I do like Dylan Strome as my first bench spot. He had a stepping out career year last season, and I could see, even though I don't fully buy into the Washington Capitals going on a deep run into the postseason, they'll be back competing for a playoff spot and a team that is still very good up front. So I like it. I hope you like today's episode. Another Mock Draft Monday. I'll be back for 3 more episodes to round out the week. Make sure you round out listening to your pods by making the Locked On NHL podcast your second listen, where there is no offseason. They bring you daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Sincerely, thank you so much, my friends. Shout out to all of y'all for tuning in for yet another solo episode with your boy. Smash that follow button, subscribe, 5 stars, all of the love that you guys know that we need. Good luck the rest of the week if you got any summer bets flowing, and we'll see you back here again for another episode on Wednesday morning.